So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is part 3, I think, of the Kerby Rosanes colouring book, Imagimorphia. And I'm getting a bit behind with pages. I seem to have a lot more pages here, my little tags, to do than I have. There's only 2 I've actually finished. So I really need to crack on and try to finish pages because I forget what I'm doing most of the time. So um, I kind of go off on a tangent, and I do that with books as well. So I get a stage of leaving books behind. So I'm working with the Derwent pencils, and I forget what colours I'm using. So again, it's another reason to kind of start a page and kind of finish it. Because the videos, I know sometimes it can be a bit boring for people watching the same video with the same technique and the same colours for a good few hours. Because they take me about 3 to 4 hours. Whereas some of the other ones have taken me about 8 to 10. But I think 4 hours is not so bad because that's like, a couple of hours for a couple of evenings. And I think that's about, or a Saturday and a Sunday. So anything you can do within 2 or 3 days, a couple of hours at a time, I think that's kind of okay. When you start doing longer ones, you get bored with it and you want it finished, or I do. So sometimes I don't want to spend hours on the same page with the same pencils doing the same colours. Um, but that's just me. So I like working this way because you get some nice effects fairly quickly. It's a decent colouring page, or I think it's a decent colouring page. I'm not playing with too much water, so I'm not spilling a lot of things. So it's easier for me in a lot of ways to work this way. Oh, Samantha, Suzanne says, "What's a natter?" Sorry, have a natter is a chit chat, chatter. It's an informal conversation, I think, which fibs do all the time. So this is a live show with live peoples talking in chat, and having a natter or an informal conversation, shall we say? And what was I going to say? So it's recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. Because although it's actually lunchtime in the UK, that's still quite early morning everywhere else on the planet, and tea time at the other side of the planet. So welcome everybody, and thank you for all my YouTubers, and thank you for watching the videos and for subscribing and making comments of things that you'd like to see more of. That would be quite good. I've hopefully sorted out the recording, and with a headset. Excuse the cold, so I've got a funny sounding voice, so hopefully that might get better in the next couple of weeks. With the headset, you can't hear Alfie barking and the postman knocking and everything else. So I'm working with the Derwent pencils, and I love this set. This is the new set. So if you get it now, it's the Tiger set. So there's some good colours. There's a good range of colours in the 72. There's about 8 or 9 greens, quite a few blues and purples, 6 or 7 greys. I think there's about 11 greens. There's 6 or 7 bright oranges, yellows, reds, and pinks. So it's quite a good set, and I kind of call it a palette of pencils because it's a palette of colours, and I've put them in what I would normally use a watercolour palette range, starting with the yellows. Then you use yellows and reds to make oranges, so they're in the middle, and then you've got the pinks, and then you've got the blues at the other side. But when you add blue to red, you get pinks and purples. And then we've got the purples, which are made of blue. So then you have at the other side back to here the yellows. So we've got all the greens, and then we've got the olive greens. So when you add browns and oranges to yellows and greens, you get all the olivey colours. Then we've got browns and fawns and reddy browns and greys, cool greys and black. And that's roughly how the colour wheel would be if it was oils, acrylics or watercolour. And that's how I like to work. And I have put them in numerical order, as Derwent have labelled them, and they're in the colour order as well, because I just find that easier to pick up and put down. So I'm not rooting around. I know that all my bright greens are on this side. I know all my blues are here. The purples are half on one side, and the pinky purples are on the other side. All my bright yellows are here. So if I want a yellow and I want a bright yellow, I go to this end. If I want an orangey, warmy yellow, I go to the other end. So even though I've got them like this, I can instantly go to different colours. And the good thing about the pastels is normally ones on the end and the ones on this end are what you get, because it's a pastel. There's very little pigment change, so it's nearly all pure pigment in these pastels and pencils. So you know exactly that's the colour you're going to get, and I like that as well. So you don't have to mess about looking at colour swatches and then choosing the paper. Having said that, I still always scribble a bit of colour on a paper before I put it in the book. Even though it's just a colour book, I like to choose the colours carefully and think about them, because that gives me that little bit more artistic ability to come out with a little bit better drawing than I would if I'd given it to a 5-year-old and say paint that red and paint that green. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it makes you think a bit more about colour. Do I want a light orange? Do I want a cold orange? Do I want a reddy orange? Do I want a yellowy orange? And so you start thinking a little bit more about colour, and it becomes a piece of artwork instead of just a colouring book. But you can take that to which extreme you want. But I quite like working that way. Yes, Suzanne, it does. It does. And that's where the wine came in. That's where the wine came in. And it's a release button as well. Um, so we're going back to the clouds. And again, I'm a bit obsessed with, which is unusual for me because I don't normally like dark colours. But this indigo, which is number 3P360, has given quite a nice, almost a, I would call that a Payne's grey. Payne's grey is made with ultramarine and black, and I think it's lamp black. It's not the other black. There's another black called something. There's a carbon black. There's about 5 blacks, and I can't remember them all. There's a lamp black. No, my brain's gone dead. But there's so many different blacks. This would be lamp black. Some are good for mixing and some aren't. And then you've got French ultramarine. So that's going to give you a warm black. And a warm black is French. It is Payne's grey. Payne's grey is a very dark. It's not quite a black, but it's a dark grey. And then you kind of get into the blacks. I might actually do a thing on blacks and greys, and shade and tone, because although I can't mix colours, I can actually explain it with pencils because I can match the colours. I had hoped to do quite a lot of colour mixing, but I'm stuck with. Oh, actually, I can do it on the tablet. I have a little UG drawing tablet which I find really good, and those at the moment are my two artistic things I have left on the planet because of the dud thumb. So if you have a dud thumb, you can still do a little bit of colouring in. So thank you for watching, and thanks all my fibs in the boxes for having a natter or a yarn. I think they said with a slang in Australia for a chit chat is a yarn. A good natter is a Yorkshire term, I think. Having a natter, having a chin wag, wagging your chin. I'm sure there's lots of others. But it's so wonderful for people to have a natter from all across the planet, because we learn lots of other things about different cultures and different medicines and different all sorts of things and different foods as well. So I made a mac and cheese last night. I've made one before, but not very well. So I was a bit poorly last night. So my hubby was poorly, so he couldn't cook tea, and everything has to be really quick for me. So I actually managed to make a white sauce. I made a white sauce, put some cheese in it to make it a cheese sauce. Boiled some macaroni up and shoved it in the oven with some cheese on top. That was it. But it was food, and it was quite good. It was homemade, so There we go. So we're playing in the Imagimorphia Kerby Rosanes, and as I say, I've started to label them on the top with little stickers. So I know that these pages have been started and not finished, and then I've put on the side more labels, and that shows you that I finished some, and there seems to be a lot more on the top than there is on the bottom. So what I'm going to try and do is to go through and see if I can finish them. Now, one of them is in a watercolour. I started the panda because I love working in watercolours. This is Inktense, this is Derwent watercolour pencils, and I love them, but I can't be very precise, and you'd have to use your thumb to be very, very accurate, which is normally how I like to work, and I can't do that. So this is going to have to wait a little bit. So I've devised a way of working without your thumb. These pastel pencils, and the pastels as well, but pastels are very expensive, will just glide across a page, because this isn't pastel paper, this is ordinary shiny paper, and it will glide across a page and leave a little bit of dust that you can then rub in and create some beautiful subtle colours. I'll turn that one off actually, see if that makes it any better. In England we have a strange light that when it's nice and bright it messes up the lamps, and when we don't have it, it upsets the lamps. But that seems to be slightly better. They're the real colours though, so I hope they're a little bit better. So I've got this indigo, and actually it's in a different series. It's a little bit different, but I do like these cold kind of cool clouds, because I never know what to do with the clouds. I always struggle. So actually using these pencils has taught me that. So I'm quite pleased with them. I have them in my little Derwent sleeves. I don't normally put them in the book unless I'm carrying them from room to room. They kind of just sit on my desk. So I do have the full set, which is 3 sides. So that's what I'm doing when I'm turning them. And although I couldn't do that left-handed, right-handed I can actually put them in the right place quite easily, so that's quite nice. They're not rolling around and they're not breaking. If they were kind of in a pencil case or a tray, they'll be clanking together and they will break, because these are very soft pastel pencils, but they are lovely to work with if you like colour, and of course colour books are all about the colour. So without further ado, I think I've put some markings on that one, so I'm going to zoom in. And the other beautiful thing about these pencils is, I'm just going to see if I can just play with the focus a little bit. I did have Sooty. Let me just see. Sooty fell on the floor. And I couldn't, this is a card I bought. I couldn't resist it because it has a picture of my cat. This is the spit of my cat, even though he's going grey. He's going grey. It's the absolute spit of my cat. And he sits like that, you know, knowing all, seeing all, and being all. He's just a terror. So just bear with me a second, see if I can just tweak that to be absolutely perfection. That's probably the best we're going to get. So if you can see, I've put a little bit of grey, and again, you're just stroking across. There's hardly any pressure. You're just stroking and that colour will come out. But if you think, oh, that's not a cloud, it's something else, I've made a complete boo-boo, you can take an ordinary eraser or the trusted Derwent, and I dropped mine, so I broke a piece of plastic, so I've had to stick it together with tape. But I stuck it there thinking that doesn't need to come apart, but I can still get to the batteries to change them, so that's quite good. And you get a little pack. So again, I don't like having things like this, but needs must. I'm having to rethink lots of things. Oh, you get a little pack with them in as well. So if you do this, you think, oh, I didn't want that colour, and this, bearing in mind, is one of the darkest ones there is. If you haven't blended it, you can completely get rid of it. Well, I say completely. There's nothing there now. There is the tiniest little bit of a stain, but you can then put another colour on top of that and it should be fine, even though this is very dark. So Ken, I love that. I love the fact that if you make a pig's ear of it, you can get away with it. Oh, hi Kingo, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Oh, Suzanne says she's got a Chi-Chi as well. Yeah. And he's the hard boy of the family, is Sooty. The first day of the summer holidays, about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more, our little cat was killed that we rescued. And the last day of the summer holidays, my daughter ran in the bedroom because I was ill and shouted, "Mummy, the cat's been run over." So that's not funny, knowing that it had just happened the first day of the summer holidays. And she said, "No, no, the cat's Sooty's under the car. He's been hit by a car and he's run under our car." So again, in the 90, in the middle of the road, we have got a lay-by, but in a lay-by, but next to a busy road, crazy woman trying to get a cat from underneath the car. And he did come out, bless him, and his face was hanging on the ground, so I had to pick him up. And I picked him up and I talked to him, and we drove straight to the vet's in my 90. Because I couldn't put the cat down once I picked him up because his jaw was held against me. And he'd broken his jaw, so literally his jaw was on the floor. So I was holding him together. And so he had his jaw wired, and he was only a kitten because his stitches outgrew his face, so he's got like an Elvis quiff in his lip because the stitch grew. He grew faster than the stitches, even though they weren't in that long. And so of course the stitch held his face up, so he looks permanently like Elvis, bless him. So he was known as the hard cat because he survived being hit by a car. But then, of course, Alfie had his major thing last year where he was hit by a lorry and several cars. So he's now the hard man of Hemingway. So that's a bit kind of grey there. So what I'm going to do is just take this and and you can do this with an ordinary eraser, as long as it's clean. It's got to be a clean eraser, otherwise you'll be just putting colour on. And I can just manipulate that a little bit to give it a bit of contrast. And then always use a soft brush because that's smudgeable, shall we say. It's pastel, it's smudgeable. But if we take the magic rigger, and it works better with a rigger, but you can do it with others, but it does work better with a rigger, and just take off excess water, even though it's been wiped on a dry baby wipe. It wants to be barely damp, and we stroke that colour, and you can always see the glisten as you're stroking over the top. And it's best to do pale first, really, because you're going to drag that and make it into a watercolour. But if you're very careful, you can stroke the top, and that's now made it a watercolour which is drying. So all this is now, for all intents and purposes, it is a watercolour on a page, and it's flat. So when that's dried, which is now, it's not a pastel anymore. So this has turned into almost like the Derwent watercolour pencils. You've used water to manipulate it, and it's dried. So if you were to wash that again, it will move because it's only a watercolour. Even though it's set it, as in it's not a pastel to smudge. It's not like the ink tents. The ink tents, when they've dried, they won't move. These will. but it means you don't have to use a fixative, you don't have to use hairspray. You can colour in your book with a tablespoon of water, and you can still get these gorgeous colours and these lovely blends, which you can get very easily with Pastel. So has anybody got any questions? Oh, so it's not just me, dear mum. Oh, that's good, because I kind of go off on a tangent. So we've got a cloud, and then when we move it across, it's kind of together there. So there's a couple of clouds on the bottom, but I'm going to go. There's a couple of airships, and actually I have no idea what colour to do airships. So when I get like that, especially in one of these books, I Google. I've actually got visions of Victorian, early 30s, 20s, 30s German airships. So if we just type in airship, and what was his name? The Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, he was in an airship as well. So I have those kind of colours thinking about it. But sometimes the brain won't work, especially for me. So I do images. So these are images of airships. So there's kind of quite an old one there, and then there's kind of magical ones, bright coloured ones. Um, they're mainly greys, but they're kind of a taupe colour. I would say they're a kind of a nice taupe colour, some of them. But I was thinking about the really old-fashioned German ones. Um, they had those gorgeous muted colours. These seem to be all modern, so I didn't put. I just go back. I think I like that one. So if you tap that one at that, so if you do that one, you can actually, if you get one that you quite like. I think I like these colours, grey greens. They're kind of a grey greeny colour. I don't want bright ones. I don't think they'll go well with this, so I think I want some nice grey green colours. Just type in. Yeah, they didn't have the colour schemes that we have. Gosh, weren't they huge? I didn't realise they were that big. These are people. They were kind of huge, weren't they? I'm just looking for. These are models, but I actually like the colours. So I think olive greens might look nice. I think we'll go for olive greens. Um, so again, the olive greens are on this side. There's an olive green and a dark green. So again, I've been using sometimes a couple of colours to blend together, but I did that on the other book. I actually like just probably one colour. And again, you really don't want to push down too much, because you want the dust just to sit. Because if you get too much dust, what'll happen? I think I'll have like a fawn basket, a tan underneath, because they were kind of baskets originally, weren't they? You're wasting your paper, so I've got a wet baby wipe, so I'm going to put it there so that when I blow the dust, it's just going to sit on the baby wipe because it's damp and it's going to collect, and that means it's not going to cause me any problems. So that was tan 570, olive P510, and dark olive P520. So I've got to make sure that my blending tool is clean, and I wipe that on a baby wipe on the table. It tends to kind of get this nice and clean. And then we'll just blur again. So I'm going to start with the palest, which was that little kind of basket underneath, and then there's going to be a little bit of colour on there, so I'm going to leave that there. And little circular motions are the easiest, but if you didn't have a blender, and I didn't realise these were so expensive. I certainly did not pay 20 odd pounds for these blenders. I've picked them up somewhere along the line cheap, because I'm a cheap Yorkshire girl. I quite like those colours, a little bit of olivey green. So that's nearly set. I could do with possibly wasn't going to put any dark, but I think I'll put dark in there, I think, just to give them some kind of and I did find a little tiny blender that has mysteriously disappeared, and this is a zero shaper, an Angel Chisel Zero firm colour shaper by Royal Sovereign, and it's quite nice, and it is really diddy. It's a zero, so it's quite tiny, and it says firm, but it's quite soft on the end, but it's just going to do that. But what I would probably do is I've taken out from a little Cotman set of watercolours, travel watercolours. You get a little tiny brush, and I think that's perfect for small spaces. So you want just a damp brush and just to touch that, and you could use this as your blending tool as well. So you just want to go over the top. So you could use a little brush like this to fix. Instead of the rigger, you could use this little brush for small areas and not actually bother blending them at all. And then take the brush, just a damp brush, and just very carefully just draw a thin line of damp water across, and then that will be set, so you don't need fixatives or anything. Has anybody got any questions? Hi Monty, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Bunny disease. Yeah, it's a bit like a bunny disease around here. Bunny Designs. So I quite like that airship. I'm liking these colours, and again, sometimes you get in the mood for using certain colours, and other times you want to be quite vibrant. So yesterday I was working in Joanna's Magical Jungle, and I was working with the same pencils, but I was using very colourful floral colours for flowers, flora and fauna. Some sticky tape stuck to me now. So again, exactly the same pastels. I was actually blending them together to make different colours. But I love the fact that I work different ways in different books, but with the same set of pencils. So I quite like that idea. And the Imagimorphia ones can be kind of a bit more stranger than. I like to be a bit more traditional in the Joanna book, because they all look like flowers that we know what they are, whereas the Kerby Rosanes, they're all creatures and they're all kind of morphed from something else. So you've got a bit more creativity here, But then I like to be a little bit more traditional in other books. So even though I'm restricted to using pencils and pastels, I can actually still change some of the way, some of the some of the ways that I colour, if that makes any sense. So I've got another airship, and I actually quite like the green, so I'm going to use a different green. But again, I always like to do a bit of a scribble, just a little bit of a scribble. I think probably we've got too much green going on down there. Maybe might have some Venetian red and dark sanguine, I think. So again, I always do a little bit of a tester. I quite like those two. So I think we'll have this one over the top. And the thumb cannot grip this pencil, so there's definitely no grippage going on here at all. So the smallest amount you put on, oh, I might actually, oops, now I've made a mistake there, so I've changed my mind. So what I want to do is I've decided I want to have different colours, so I can take that off. Oh, take the wrong bit off. If I take it all off, because it's not been blended in, it's basically just sitting on top of the surface. So I've managed to erase all that brown there that I put on. So again, sometimes that's quite good. If you make a boo-boo, I love the fact that you can just take it off. That's really good. So what I'm going to do is I want this colour here. And then I want this colour for the stripes. I think that might look quite unusual. So again, just the smallest amount of colour, and as a tight Yorkshire lass, that's good because you don't use a lot of colour. You're not wasting anything, so I like that. So that was the dark sanguine 620 and the Venetian red 630. And then blow the excess dust, and there's not a lot, it's straight onto the baby wipes, so we don't have to worry about asthma. So again, just take the blending tool and smush that around a little bit. Now that's probably a little bit paler, but we can go back in if we want. I'm actually going to use the smaller blender tool, I think. It seems to have got quite a lot of dark on it, but let's see. This one kind of stains more. But it's quite diddy, is that? But it'll just push the colour where I want it. I didn't realise I got this one, so I'm quite pleased I found it before I bought any more. And you're making this colour sit into the page, pushing it into the page. But it's not pastel paper, so it's not going to kind of grip as well as pastel paper would, but we've got a little bit of something going on. And then I'm not actually going to be bothered about changing the colour, just leave that as it is. Sometimes I quite like, even though these are really dark colours, I kind of like the fact it blends to a very pale colour. And again, it's a really easy way to work, so I quite like that. Very quick, and then we can possibly put a bit of yellow ochre on the tail. Blend that in. And then if we're happy with it, we could put a highlight if we wanted by just across the top. And then we brush those away with a nice brush. Just a little subtle highlight just across the top. And then our trusted rigger just to fix it, and then we don't have to come back to it, it's done. So just stroke all the way across that very pale first. I like to do the pale sides first, because you're picking up a bit of colour as you go, so you've got to be a bit careful because you've turned it into a watercolour now. And then just tease that out there, and that's become set. Has anybody else got any questions? If you pop them in caps. So thanks for joining me on the Ustream chat, and thank you for YouTubers for watching at your leisure. If you've got any requests, pop them in the selection box for questions or for requests. Tell me something that you like and tell me something you don't like. I don't mind people saying they don't like something if they tell me why they don't like it. For goodness sake, don't just hit the don't like button, because I worry all night about what I've done wrong. But if you tell me what I've done wrong, I can either think, oh well, actually I can do something about that. I'm just looking for this particular green and I can't find it. A green oxide. Let me have a look. Green oxide. Yes, I think it was green oxide. So I'm going to move that across. I'm going to do that leaf there. And I so love playing with these pastel pencils. And apologies if you think it's a bit boring, because you watch me do this nearly every day. I hope different pages and different colours do different things. So. I could just do with a tiny bit of... Oh, that's a different leaf, isn't it? Yeah, it's a different leaf. So it's there. That's not the same leaf. I don't think it is. So just... And I'm learning to be softer and softer, so I use the least amount of water every time I do it. So again, that's quite good. At first I used to kind of bear down a little bit, and now I've learnt not to do that. So because it's under everything, I'm not really bothered about a highlight, so I'll just tease that. And you can always see where you've been, because the black outline line becomes sharper. So that's another little one that's done. And there's a chimney up there, so I think I've got a terracotta somewhere. Yeah, I've got a terracotta, so I'm going to make a terracotta chimney. And so it looks more brick. And then the French dark grey can be... So dark grey was 650 and the terracotta was 640. And because it's quite small, I'm just going to go in with a damp brush. I'm not going to blend. I'm just going to blend it with the brush. And this is what you can do if you don't have a blender. For goodness sake, don't go buy one. till you get one that you really like. Just use a damp brush and manipulate the colour where you want it. It works exactly the same. I like blending slightly better, but you know, I've done lots of pages just with the water. The cat page. A little bit careful not to knock my new pencils on the floor. There is a video, but it's not very good because I tried to mess about with the colours, and the back page is very yellow. But this particular, the cat page on the Daydreams, Hannah Carlson's Daydreams, that was done by scratching a little bit of colour and then using a damp brush. So I didn't blend with a blender, I just used a damp brush and blended it, and then it went into a watercolour and dried, and that's the effects you get when you do that. So it worked quite well. You can still get some quite nice blending effects. And then it's all set, it's not a pastel, so you don't have to then go over it with a damp brush, it's already done. Oh, as the volume seemed to have gone again. Just see if I can move that. See if I can move that. Is that better? Sorry. Sorry, Suzanne, is that better? I'll turn this up very slightly. I'm always conscious of the fact that the microphone is really next to me. So I was doing the green. I'm going to do some brown, and then we need a clock face, but I'm always worried about that. So we do the little butterfly here, and I think we're going to do the butterflies. I think we've got purple butterflies, but I think we're going to have monarch butterflies, which are kind of orangey red. So we've got tomato and raspberry. I think there's two nice colours because there's a little butterfly there. So again, the tomato is P120, and just, you can literally just do one scratch of colour. And then we have raspberry 140, and again just the tiniest little scratch of colour. And then we shall blow the excess dust off, but again I'm getting quite good at not wasting dust. Sorry Suzanne, I keep turning it down because I'm worried that it's too loud, but I don't know why it's gone down quite low. And then I'm just going to start and just kind of blend that together, but I do like these colours, like a little monarch butterfly. And then I'm going to use the tiny one to kind of take a bit of that colour and rub it into the body. I don't think I want to highlight on there. I think I'm just going to go in there with the little tiny brush and turn all that into a watercolour. And that's finished, so I didn't have to mess about too much. We've got some nice flowers there, and I do like the deep cadmium and the dandelion colour. I like those two colours, but I think I'm going to use dandelion. It's just not quite as bright because these colours are a little bit muted. So I'll put some colour on here. And again, I must remember to get rid of that red because it will be all over the beautiful yellow. And again, not much dust blown away. blend it in and move it up to give a really nice natural highlight. And again, in the Joanna Basford book, I'm using 3 or 4 colours and blending them together. Here I'm just using one because it's quite quick. I've just got one colour, and then I'm going to use the electric eraser so that I can just put a highlight on that petal when I want it. And again, I think that's blended enough for me. It's made a little bit of a nice colour, and I like it. Right, so now we need some greenery. So I need a bit of a brighter green because that's quite dull. So I think we're going to go for the shamrock green. Looks quite nice. No, I don't think I like the shamrock green. I think I like the mid green. I think I'm going to use that as well. So if I blend that, oops, if I use that as a blender now, get just a touch of green on there. So that's going to give me just a nice highlight up to there. And again, it's quite a small space, so I'm not going to use the big rigger. I'm going to use the tiny little watercolour brush. And just go over those so they are now set and they are no longer a pastel, they are a little watercolour. I don't think I did that. And if you forget and you go over it again, it's not going to matter, because as long as it's not wet, you can go over it as many times as you want. So down here we have another little yellow flower, and I think I'm going to use that raspberry, which is 410. I think I'm going to use that for the stamen. Sorry, it was 140. So I need to blend. Just always got to keep remembering to clean your little blending tool, because otherwise it will make such a mess of your colour. So you can blend that up. And round, so we've got, that's quite nice. And I'm going to put a bit of a highlight just on the top. And that's so much nicer than getting another pencil out and scribbling and messing about. So, but what I'm going to do is use this little paintbrush just to activate that red and move it about a bit, and then use the bigger rigger for the flower. Trying to keep away from that pink because it will move. And that becomes a little watercolour. It's a little bit yellower than it looks on there. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in caps. I'm just going to carry on. I'm going to leave that yellow one out and the green one because I'm using that, but I want the olivey one out for that now. I think that was a different olive. It was the dark olive I used. And again, because I've made a mistake, it doesn't matter. I can take it off with the eraser and nobody knows I'd made a mistake. So I really like that, especially when I'm always picking up the wrong colour. So I'm only putting the pencil where the dark Kerby Rosanes has put the hatching and the cross hatching darker lines, and then that will give me a dark tone there and a paler tone above it. So I can think that's finished. Put the highlight on by taking it off. Taking the excess pastel off an eraser, and then taking my little damp brush and just stroking right round. And again, that's now set as a watercolour would be set, and you can't smudge it, so I quite like that. So again, I've got this dark olive 520. I'm just going to move across to here. And then I'm just going to blend this across. And it's no pressure on this blender, it's just rubbing. Basically it feels like an eraser. That's just how it feels, and you probably could use an eraser actually, thinking about it. You could possibly use an eraser for blending. I left a tiny bit there, but I can smudge that in there. We'll take those out there. And I actually have a natural highlight. I don't need to put another one in. I quite like that as it is. So that's quite nice. Yes, that's my little trusted electric eraser. But I'm not using it for blending, I'm using it for highlights. Or if I make a mistake, because it will actually take pastel pencil off, so it's quite nice. And I've missed a bit there, so I wonder if we could just get that bit there. Yep. If I want to blend a tiny space, I'll use the tiny blender. And then just stroke a little bit of water over there. Oh, did you find it on Amazon? Oh, how much is it? They're about £5 here, £5 or £6 here, I think. They do sell them with the blade, but the blade's a bit expensive, and I would suggest anybody not using that blade. I would say you get a Stanley knife blade. Stanley knife is the best because it folds up if you've got children, or if you put it in a pencil case, you can fold that blade out and put your hand in that pencil case, and you are not going to cut yourself. I have to put my hand in the art bag very carefully because I can cut myself on that. It will go up there a little bit, but I'm not going to force it because I'm going to break the blade, so I shall leave it. I wish I could find my orange Stanley knife blade, but I'll buy another one when I go to Ireland. Is it $12.99 in Canadian? The only thing is, if you've got bad hands, they are good. Now there is a pencil, and there is a pencil and an eraser, and I haven't got them, and I saw them and thought I'm not going to buy them, and they were about £5 or £6, and there's a blender and a burnisher, and I thought they'd actually might be quite good, so I'm going to have a look at those. So I probably will buy those. So we have a little snail here. So I think we could have a bit of a chocolate striped snail. I think we could have a bit of a chocolatey striped snail, I think, possibly. And chocolate is a £5.90. And then I think I'm going to go with burnt ochre, which is 600, and that's quite a nice warm tan colour. And because he's so small, I'm just going to go in with a little damp brush. I'm not going to blend. I'll blend as I wet this. And because I've done that, now I should have some pale on my brush, which has made a different colour. It's made a lighter colour. So again, you can manipulate this colour to make highlights as much or as little as you want. It's become a watercolour. If you can see, I'm pushing that. It's now become a watercolour, but it's ready set. I don't have to do anything. So you didn't have to blend. You could just mush about with a little paintbrush if you wanted. And again, I love that. Tablespoon of water, and you can make all these pastels into a watercolour. So this is the different green. Don't know if we got to this one or not. I think it's this one. So I'm going to go underneath. I'm going to do this one while I'm at it. I think that's got a bit of green on it. So I'll show you the difference. So I'll take the little brush that's damp, and I'll just, if I stay within the lines, I've gone over the lines with the pencil, but if I stay within the lines, I can erase that off, but if I wet it, it'll be more difficult. So I've made a mistake. I've gone over with a pencil, but I can activate all that as a watercolour. So then I'm going to blend this one here with the big blender. And then kind of smush this about a bit. This is probably a little bit too big, but it's very quick and easy. And you can get a little bit of highlight as you go. So I kind of like that. There's a little bit of a highlight, but what I'm going to do is take off the mistake that I went over the line, but I didn't go over the line with the water brush. So that should take off all that. And then I can go back in. And even though I've blended it, I can still take the mistake off. And again, I just love that because I'm always making mistakes, so it's quite nice. So I'm just going to put the highlight back on that one there, and this one, and this one, and just there. That one. So I've put a little bit of a highlight back in there then, and I just need to take my little brush and very carefully cover the entire area with a very thin layer of water. And as the paintbrush is stroking the page, the glisten of the water is disappearing because it's almost instant. It's very fine between wet and dry, and that's going to make a completely flat page. Yes, I did stream the cat page and I recorded it, but the quality is not particularly very good because I was messing about with the light, so the background is quite orangey. But it's called, I think it's called Daydreams. I'll tell you in 2 seconds what it's called. Yes, please, darling. No, thank you, darling. Let me have a look and see if I can find it. Just bear with me. It's been a bit slow. Phone's been slow. Oopsie, phone's been slow. It was just bear with me. A lot of them are recorded actually. A lot of them are recorded. Oh, it's Joanna's. So it's not Joanna's. It's Daydreams. That's the one. That's the one with the cat. And it looks very, very yellow. But it's called Daydreams. Oopsie, sorry. it's called. Daydreams with Derwent Pastel pencils, blended with a damp brush and fixed with water. And that one is not blended at all. It's just used the pencil. It's a bit jumpy as well, so I didn't like that. I must have knocked the button, but it's very yellow, so apologies. It's very yellow. But you can see that I'm just touching with colour, and then I use a damp brush. But it's a very poor video. It's the only one I do that's completely water, I think. But it's just like the little one. Instead of blending this, I'd just go in with a brush, and it's almost like the Derwent pencil. Where it's the darkest, it's the deepest, and then you can smush it round to make a highlight and manipulate it, and it's very similar. Oh, thank you. I'm not particularly bothered about that, but thanks. Cherub Lulu says you can use a plastic water tip to protect it. This isn't to protect it. This is to protect my hand because it's a scalpel blade. Um, this is to protect the scalpel blade and for my hand rather. But I have hundreds and hundreds, literally, of every denomination of these scalpel blades, so I'm not really bothered about sharpening them. That's just there to stop me damaging my hand, because for some reason the proper scalpels do not have. I haven't come across a proper top. Thank you for that. So if you want to protect your blades, mine tend to stay sharp anyway because I have quite a lot. And I have them in the pencil case wrapped in they come in paper. They come in a paper wrap in foil, and I tend to keep them in that. So again, if you didn't have too much chattering and me going off on a rabbit trail, you would be able to finish this page fairly quickly. Um, there is a tiny difference though between using might as well do all these leaves actually. There is a difference between using a brush. I'll show you what it is. So there's no blending here. There's no blending. That's blended, this isn't. So the damp brush, you're going in with a damp brush, picking up all that pastel colour. The one thing you won't be able to do is to put a very shiny highlight on it though, because it's already set. This now is a set watercolour, so it'd be really difficult to put a highlight on it. Whereas you can if you blend it first. So that's the difference. You've got more control with the blend, and then you can kind of take it apart and use the eraser to make some highlights. Add a little bit more darkness to make it darker, and then you can set it. So this is the quickest way, and you don't have to buy a blender, and you still get quite a nice effect, but it's just not quite as good as that one. But you wouldn't notice. I don't think you'd notice too much. So you don't have to buy a blender, you can just manipulate the colour with a damp brush. And the riggers of course last forever because they're just going to release a tiny amount of dampness. So riggers are better, but for £2.50 you could buy a few riggers without breaking the bank. I think somebody said there were a couple of dollars. Oh, thanks, Lulu. She says she uses them on the sharp tweezers to keep them sharp. That's good because tweezers are difficult to do. Um, so I'll have a look at those actually. I used to make my own books as well, and that's kind of gone out the window a little bit. So that's how to do it the very quickest way, and then I'm just going to do this. I think my camera's moved a bit because I want to be down there. The light is better down here. Yeah, sorry about that, the light's better. So again, put the colour on, blend it through and round. And then if you're not happy, you can put a little bit extra. I think that's green as well. I'm going to put that green. You can put that extra little bit in there. And then use the eraser to put that highlight back on. So you can't very well do that when you've fixed it. You can a little bit. You can a little bit. You could still do it a little bit. But there you are taking off. Yes, you can take it off when you've made it into a watercolour. If you want to. And then I just want my damp rigger and set it. Now I've made a bit of a mistake. I caught the bird's kind of end of the tip of the wing on there, so I set everything, didn't I? So it is set now, so that's quite nice. It's all set and done. So let's see if we can just get that off that bird's wing. Yep, we can do. That's good. And that bit there. So we can brighten up the bird's wings again. That's good. Now that looks like a little eagle actually, but I don't know what colour. Maybe going to be brown. I'm not sure. I've kept the yellow out, so we've got some more. Got to remember not to move that thumb. It's just a bit too painful. I think that's a flower. I'm not sure if that's a flower or not. Yes, I think it is. But so again, I've got green on there, so I've got to get rid of that because otherwise that green will be bad. And then we'll just put that highlight back on. And then we'll fix that. We'll fix that one because it's fixed. Then we don't have to worry about it. And then we'll go back over here and blend this one. And I actually like that one just as it is. I like that one. It's just got that natural. I was quite lucky with the way that blended nicely. So I'm just going to put that on there. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be another flower. Mm. So we'll blend these. Sorry, the little dogs want to coming in and out. Just, and again, it's quite fast. Is this? It's quite nice. Just put the highlighter back in. So this saves you any more blending that you might have to do. And there is some subtle shade. There is some subtle shades going on there. Now, you can't see them very well, but there are. So that's quite nice. So we'll just very carefully stroke over there. And I've made a mistake and forgot to put the cherry red in there. Not the cherry red, the raspberry, which is 140. So I think I'm going to put. So that's already been dried, and yet I've managed to do that. So that's quite nice. I could possibly brighten those up a bit. Use the little tiny brush. And manipulate that colour where we want it. I'm quite happy with that. So everything's been fixed. I need a bit of green on there, so I could do with probably a better pointed. And I missed a leaf there, so that leaf wants doing. And then we've got actually into the. I think that would be a leaf. And again, that's a bit of a tight space, so I'm just going to use a little brush. And this is little chewed toffee's coming up now to say hi, so we've seen everybody today. Hi, Sir Toffee. Hi, Toffee. Toffee likes onesies, don't you, Toff? Can we say hi then? Toffee likes onesies. Toffee. Toffee. She's very vocal, is Toffee. Hi, Toffee. This is Toffee. This is Toffee. This is Toffee. She looks like she's a chewed toffee, don't you? She's very vocal, is that Toffee? Very vocal, like Toff. Very purry. Very in your face when you're trying to do anything. So, there we go, Toffee. But she has a fetish for onesies, anything furry, anything soft and warm to sleep on. There she is. Yes, thank you, Toffee. I don't think you really want to be in the camera, do you? You just stood on the butterfly. Thank you, Mrs. If you go down, thank you. Put that back onto there. Put my blanket back on. Little blankie. That was little Toffee. Bless her socks. Toffee was rescued. Toffee's a little bit of filey fluff. So I'm going to go over that one. I'm just using the little brush because it's a little bit easier on small spaces, like especially stems. It's quite good for stems. And of course, once these are set, I don't need to use the brush on them because they've already been used. Just so that looks quite nice down there now. It's a little bit darker than it's showing. So we have a wood colour, so I'm going to put all these away. I think I've done all the flowers and all the leaves. Just bear with me. There's another leaf there, so put these away. I do want the dark olive though, because I found another leaf there, but these can all go away. So I've got 540. $440, $360. And I think I'll do these olive as well. These little. So thanks for joining me, as I've gone very quiet, concentrating on what I'm doing. So to try and finish this page if I can. How we're doing for time. So thanks everybody for joining me. I hope you've all had a good natter. Just going to go in there with the eraser just to give it a bit of a highlight again. Kind of like doing that. It's 2 seconds worth of trouble, and yet, oopsie, it works quite well. I'm going to blend this one. It's not quite damp enough, that brush. You do need a dampish brush. So I'm going to fix this one with this little brush, and I've got to be careful I don't go back over it because it'll rub the dark into the light and then I'll lose the highlight. So this one's kind of wet there. Yep. Thank you, darling. Oh, thanks, darling, I did. Right, so I'll pan out and I'll show you that. Then we've just got the clock to do. So I'll just zoom out a bit and you can have a look that I have made some progress today. So I think so. I quite like some of those nice pale colours. They're a lot different to what I'm used to. There's all these kind of leaves kind of floating about. So, oh darling, don't leave it there, darling, because I'll spill. I don't really want that on my leather. A new desk. Never mind. There we go. So again, you don't have to have a blending tool if you don't want one. You just have to play with a rigger and the pastel. It's quite well behaved, and I've just found the end of the stingray's tail there. Look, so I actually used my old set for that. I used the indigo, and it's going to be difficult getting in there, I think. But if I do this, and if I get the colour on the end, I can just tease it down to the bottom, so that'll work quite well. And it's set, so that's good. So we have another cloud there, but it's a different indigo, so I don't want to do that indigo. So that's 520. I need the 360 indigo to finish this one off. So you've seen how I do it close up, and this is how it's done. Not close up. So I'm pulling that colour around where I want it, leaving the dark areas where we have dark areas, then a bit of a highlight, and then when you take that off, you've got that lovely highlight down there. And a quick, you've got to be very careful over the pale. Do that first to set it, because the dark will stick to your paintbrush and become a watercolour, and it will take off that lovely highlight. So all that's set. So I've just got the treated now. There's always odd little things that I never know what to do with. Always in these pages. Oh, thank you, Kingo. So I'm going to finish. I think they're the colours. They're the real colours. So I'm going to finish this, and then I can finish that page. But I'm going to stop the video because it's gone on for long enough. So thank you for joining me, and that's the end of the page. I'll do the face in the same way with a chocolate colour, but it's all done in the same way. So thanks for watching.